Hi, Noah. Thank you
Oh gosh.
so much for offering to do this conversation on Zoom. Noah's about to go to Montreal to be with her family on Friday, so we wanted to be able to have you in person, obviously, but it just didn't work out quite in the way that we would have liked. So instead, we're talking right before Pesach. So I just want to say thank you for making time in your incredible schedule for this conversation, and yeah, let's just jump in.
I'm so glad to be at CBST again, and hello
Yeah.
everybody, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, truly. Um, let's jump in first. Many people, obviously, you've been a friend and a partner with CBST over the course of many years. But many people might be hearing you for the first time. So why don't you just give a little introduction to ACRI and how, you're the executive director there, but also a little bit of the journey of how you got to being where you are and the work that you've done to get where you are and the work that you've done over the years with CBST as well.
Yeah, so CBST is such a pivotal part of my journey, so I'm glad to share that. So I was born in Jerusalem to a really average Israeli secular family. Like our Shabbat tradition was that my father would go to the non-kosher butcher shop and get bacon, and that's what we did on Shabbat morning. And my path to becoming a rabbi really went through social change work. So I was the um, head of the Jerusalem Open House, which is the LGBT center in Jerusalem, which CBC is very close to. And I think that Jerusalem is probably the most religious city in the world that has an LGBT center in it. So that provided many interesting challenges and opportunities, and I got to see how religion and Judaism in particular can be a destructive force, really ruining people's lives, and how it can be a source of freedom and justice and liberation, mostly through my work with CBSD and other progressive communities. And back then, we were the only LGBT organization in town, so I got to work with Palestinian lesbians, ultra-Orthodox gay men, every different sector of Jerusalem society that you can imagine, and I really learned a lot. And when I left there, I wanted to look at social justice issues from a broader perspective than the LGBT perspective, and I joined an organization called MEET, which was founded in MIT in Boston, which was an extracurricular program for outstanding students from high school students from Israel and the West Bank. And one of the major challenges in that program, or one of the major roles that I had, was looking at the reluctance of the Israeli teens. It was a very competitive program, very, intelligent and friendly and social kids. And the Israeli students were very reluctant at the beginning to socialize with Palestinian students. And MEET, like most encounter programs, is built in favor of the Israelis. The Palestinians have to cross checkpoints in order to get there, and we spoke in English, but everybody around us spoke Hebrew, which was very comfortable for the Israelis, very alienating for the Palestinians. And it was a computer science program. So the Israeli education system is obsessed with preparation for computer science, and the Palestinian education system does none. So Israelis had so many advantages in the program, and still they were petrified.
Wow.
And the more I looked into it, and I brought consultants, and I did workshops, and I spoke to students, the more it became apparent to me that the Israeli students, who were all from secular Jewish high schools, couldn't articulate anything about their identity, their Jewish identity. They didn't have to do, they had very few articulations, and all of them had to do with the Holocaust. And the Palestinian students came with a really strong narrative, both religiously and nationally. And that has led me to an understanding, has only deepened since, that the void in Jewish progressive identity that the progressive camp has in Israel has profound implications not only on really important questions like conversion or the Kotel or what we do on Shabbat, but it has a profound influence on how we see ourselves and how we see the other and how we think about justice. And that's what led me to rabbinic school, and understanding that we need to develop a really deep Jewish progressive identity in Israel. And so I went to rabbinic school, and I spent 12 years working at the Israel Religious Action Center, which is like the social justice arm of the reform movement in Israel. And so I had a very broad experience in social justice work, but still I felt pretty overwhelmed. And I took, 4 years ago, I took my dream job, which is as the executive director of the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, ACRI, which is, we like to say that we're like the Israeli ACLU. We have a very broad mandate to look at all human and civil rights issues in Israel, and we are the oldest and largest civil rights organization in Israel. And it's been an intense 4 years to be doing this kind of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, I feel like I've spoken with you and heard you speak multiple times, and I feel like I still learned more about you in that, just in what you just said. So thank you.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can
and
go
seriously,
deep.
CBSC has played such an important role in my life and my professional development. So I'm really deeply grateful for the community
Wow.
and
Wow.
the members
Well,
who've always been kind and welcoming.
we are so grateful to you. So thank you again for taking the time. And again, I think we could probably spend an hour together, but we only have a little bit of time. So I'm going to press forward and just ask you. So for those that don't know, Noah, you and your wife Netta are here actually in the States right now, which is why we
With
were
her.
going to have you come in person if we could have. I thought, could you talk through a little bit about your decision to be here, not in Israel, and what's it like on the ground there? What's it been like for you personally, for your family personally, and then maybe we can broaden it out for you to tell us a little bit about just generally what's happening in Israel.
Yeah, so we had this U.S. trip planned. It's my daughter's bat mitzvah
Oh, wow.
trip.
Yes, yes.
But we have decided to stay since it is pretty miserable in Israel right now. And, whenever I think about that, I know, and it's important to say that it's much harder in Gaza, it's much harder for Palestinians in the West Bank, it's much harder in Tehran, it's much harder in Lebanon. And whenever I hear the sirens and rush with my kids to the shelter, I know that I am privileged to have a shelter and I am privileged to have sirens. And still, it's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, having said all that, it is horrible. And being in Israel like that is like a combination of, imagine COVID, like the schools are closed, the stores are closed, you're not supposed to go out of the house.
Yeah.
But also when you're in the house, you are always anticipating a siren. You have to, in the middle of the night, meet your annoying neighbors downstairs. You have to wake up your children and run with them. And you basically, you never get any rest. Iran is very has much less weapons, but they're using them very strategically. So, if you have one siren at 1 a.m. and one siren at 4:30 a.m., it ruins your night, and having that consecutive night is just exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And so for now, since everybody's working remotely, at Acri we're not able to work because we don't have a regulated shelter. We're not able to work in the office, so we're working from home. And my wife is a therapist in the Israeli school system, and that's also closed for now. So we decided to stay for a while, and we'll see how things develop.
Yeah. Wow. Just really so hard to hear about. And as you said, not just the physical act of going, but the emotional anticipation of constantly knowing that a siren is going to come and not knowing how or when. And of course,
And it really differs. We're in Jerusalem, so we get less sirens. I went to meet my chairperson in Tel Aviv, so I went to see him in this coffee shop at a mall that has a shelter. And then there was this siren, and so we went to the shelter, and I was like looking at these kids in Tel Aviv. They were just like, all the parents and all the children were just out of their minds, screaming at each other.
Yeah.
Like you could see that they had no patience for this at all. It requires a lot of tenacity.
And what's it been like being here now that you're out of that, and how are the kids sort of regulating to being here? And is it taking a while? Is it
So we got our first stop was Disney World, and so we got to Disney World in the evening, and it's all like lakes and their reflections. So the kids saw lights in the sky, and they told me these are rockets, and I told them, but sweeties, we spoke about that. There are no rockets in the U.S. They're like, look, it's rockets. And I was like, no, it's not. So they were like, are you telling me that there could never be rockets in the U.S.? And so it's been a little time to adjust, but they're very happy to not be in the. Yeah.
That's an amazing story, just to be going straight to Disneyland, and and also, oh my gosh, right, for American kids to be able to see fireworks, you would never think it's rockets, and of course that's just not true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
on our, we didn't hear it was very far away. And on the second day of the at Disney World, they had fireworks, and of course, in the beginning, they were very jumpy, and they were like, "Don't Americans understand that it's very scary to hear explosions?" I'm like, no, for them, it's not scary.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Tell to go a little deeper on what it's like in Israel right now.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how are people feeling about the war? Like, is there general support? Is there factions of people who are, you're in the lefty world, you're in the lesbian community. Are there people who are speaking out against it? What's the feeling on the ground?
So first of all, I think that most Israelis are really just overwhelmed with the children at home having to work and the shelters, and the political things are coming a little later. There's a lot of suppression of the attempts to demonstrate. Uh, this is Erev Pesach in Israel. We submitted an appeal today for a group of people who want to protest against the war, and on Saturday night, and we got a hearing Friday at 11:30, which is the court is closed on Friday. So we are really pushing for the ability of Israelis to demonstrate. The demonstrations are going to be small at this time.
Yeah.
We are seeing the war had immense support, like 83% support on the first day. Now it's in the 50s. I think it's plummeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a usual cycle. When a war begins, people are very excited about the firepower and the macho energy, and then very quickly afterwards it starts, faltering and not succeeding. And that is the experience of Israelis right now. That if Israelis had imagined 2 months ago that the war in Gaza had been a failure, but the wars in Lebanon and Iran have been successful.
Yeah.
I think that was an illusion that has really crushed, and so Israelis are having to deal with the failure on so many fronts.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And just kind of on the political level. When the war began at the end of February, Netanyahu spoke about having disassembling the Knesset and having fast cycle election, like in 90 days having an election, because he thought he would have immense support. The current polls show that he is losing support. He still has he still is losing about 20% of his base. And so he is now working to postpone the elections for as long as he can.
Yeah, as we were talking about, it's kind of all happening in this very big shadow of elections, and
Yes.
it's important for us to hear about that here in the States as well.
So the last day of the elections could happen. The last day that the elections could happen in Israel is October 27th of this year.
Okay.
The general assumption is that Netanyahu doesn't want the elections in October, so because people will have been in the midst of the ceremonies of October 7th, so the general assumption is that the elections will be held September 7th.
Okay. Well, since we're on the more political part of this conversation, I want to pivot a little bit and just I know you've been speaking actually both on NPR and CNN this week about the new law that just came out in Israel about the death penalty for Palestinians for acts of terror. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that, maybe just explain it a little bit for people who might be confused, and if there's anything more that you sort of want to share on that topic.
Yeah. So the death penalty, the idea of having death penalty for Palestinian terrorists is not new in Israel. It's been brought up again and again in every Knesset in the past 20 years by the far right. And the fact that it had passed this week is because it's part of the judicial overhaul. In the past, the security administration, the Shin Bet, has voiced an opposition to the death penalty, saying that it will bring less security to Israelis. It will turn perpetrators of terrorist attacks into martyrs, and will motivate people to go into into it more.
Yeah.
This past year, Netanyahu was able to replace the head of the Shin Bet, and rather than going according to the tradition of choosing a professional from the organization, he brought in a loyalist, and that loyalist changed the position of the organization according to the will of Netanyahu, and this is what we're seeing on the ground. So it's all part of this big judicial overhaul that you've been hearing about. This is one aspect of it. And so this bill, which is terrible, Israel is the only country in the world that is working towards the death penalty. All of the other countries are working to reduce the death penalty, either in practice or changing the laws on the books. And the law is both, a symbol of how the sacred idea of the sanctity of human life is being devalued. Yes. We're seeing that in many different ways, but this is the most crystallized example. They open champagnes and they give out cookies when the law has passed. They have lapel pins with a hanging noose on their. It's a celebration of death. It gives you the creeps. Imagine I've sat through hours of deliberations on the width of the rope and the length of the rope, and it's such a horrifying experience, and that's about the death penalty in general. This specific bill is the specific law is drafted in a way that both limits judicial oversight and judicial discretion in terms of how to in terms of punishment. It's a law that clearly only targets Palestinians. It's been part of the deliberation, and it's part of the draft of the language of the law, and it also changes a very basic idea of the apartheid regime in the sense that under military occupation, which Israel is militarily occupying the West Bank, the Israeli parliament is not allowed to legislate over the West Bank. The military commander has to make those decisions. And this is the Knesset and the government taking away the powers of the military commander and really changing the way the military occupation can be viewed in the future. And so all of that is incredibly disturbing. There are many other disturbing facts in the law. And we have submitted an appeal. Minutes after the law passed, we've submitted an appeal to the Supreme Court. And we're hopeful that they will intervene.
Wow. I mean, our time is too short to really go in depth, but just a huge amount of gratitude for you and the work that you and your organization and partners do on trying to, keep the sanctity of human life really a Jewish value and to hold Israel to that standard. And it's such tough work that you are doing. So thank you and I sort of want to close. I want to close sort of in two ways because, like I said, this conversation could keep going on, and I would, I would love to just have you be here and teach us for a whole weekend. But, number one, something that I have always valued and appreciated about you is your ability to bring a little bit of nechemta into the work you do, a little bit of comfort or light or optimism. And is there anything that is keeping you sort of in some frame of optimism or hopefulness that you can share with us?
So first, I want to I've learned a lot in the past years, and I'll share my points of hope and optimism in a second. But I also want to say that my experience has taught me that it's not available every day.
Yeah.
Some days these things they just don't come to you, even though you try. And so I've learned that agency, determination, and commitment I have every day. And hope I have some days, and some days I don't. So when I don't have hope, I hold on to the determination. I think that's something that you always have.
Incredible. Yeah. No, that's optimistic in and of itself to remind yourself. Yeah.
But for me, I think I find great hope in the partnership between Israeli Jews and Palestinians that we have in our work. We have such amazing and committed partners that are so determined and strong in their faith that we can build a better life for ourselves and for our children. and that is a huge source of hope for me. And I, you know, and part of my work is that I'm in a network of all different human rights and civil rights organizations around the world. And on the one hand, it is really discouraging to see the crisis of democracy everywhere. It's not an Israeli thing, it's not an American thing, it's a global thing. And nobody has quite figured out the way to make democracy appealing in the way that we believe it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we can see that the populist leaders are failing everywhere. They're unable to deliver on their promises. They're great at being elected, they're horrible at ruling.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the opening that we have. And I don't know that we've figured out how to use it, but it's there for us to think about and to get through once we have a better understanding of the situation.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, we're literally about to go into Pesach, and I just feel like it's real Pesach Torah that you're giving us right now also, that, there are tyrants in the world, and it's our work to try and figure out that way. I mean, as you said, maybe we don't have it yet, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And it's our work to try and figure out how to topple tyranny everywhere, and hopefully lead to greater liberation for everyone. But I want to say Pesach Sameach. I know you're celebrating here, not in Israel, and I know you'll be surrounded by wonderful family and friends and wonderful people, but also that there's a little bit of heartbreak in not being able to be where you'd like to be at home. So just so much blessing to you and your family, your wife, your kids, everybody who's close to you, and everybody who's having to run for bomb shelters in the middle of their Pesach Seder right now also. So thank you, Noah, for your time, for your energy, for your efforts. So good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, and hello and Chag Sameach to everybody at CBSC, and we will be in touch in better times, I hope.
I hope as well.
Thank you.